Barry Green for the record. Jared
Kushner, Manager of IT.
Larry Clark, board member.
Assistant.
And Nikki's coming and going, so we'll leave her out of this. Okay, thank you, everybody, and welcome. Agenda additions and approval. Are there any? None from you? Any from anybody here? Mr. Stevens?
There it was. Just like an update on the boat dock lift.
Can we put that as 5.2 under the development reports? Yes? Jacinta, does that work for you? 5.2, everybody's okay with that? And then with that agenda addition, you will move that, Mr. Clark? All those in favor? That's carried, thank you. Minute approval from our regular February 23rd meeting of the Municipal Planning Commission. Mr. Stevens, you're good with the minutes?
I am.
Move them.
I will move them.
All those in, any errors or omissions? Nobody seen none? All those in favor? That's carried and moved. Thank you. Business arising from the minutes, none. What we'll do, if we could, Mr. Green is here, so if everybody is in favor, we'll go to 6.2 under development permits. Oh, Mr.
See, Roxanne Wooden is on the line. I'm not sure if that's the one but she has, she can only stay till about 25 after 1.
Okay, so we'll do it in order at 6.1, and then we'll go to Ms. Wooden. Okay, if everybody's okay with doing it in that order?
Why don't you do the fives?
We'll do the fives after. Yeah. Okay, so, okay. Go ahead, who's taking that? Rich? Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to bring an existing structure into compliance by applying for a variance to the side yard, 70% relaxation from 3 feet from 10 feet, and a rear yard relaxation of 44% from 25 feet to 14 feet setback. This property was purchased by the applicant in 2021. At that time, it was marketed as having a detached dwelling on the subject property. Shortly after purchasing the property, the applicant contacted planning staff to discuss issues with what they believed to be the approach located at the rear of the property. It was during this time that planning staff identified the subject property was designed to have an approach located on the front of the property on the Sunset Lane, and there was no legal access to the property from the rear. It was also discovered that there was no permit for the existing structure to be a principal building used as a dwelling. There is a permit from 2014 for an RV to be the principal structure, and the existing structure was approved to be an ancillary building garage with an overhead loft. The structure did meet all the setback requirements for an ancillary building, but does not meet the setbacks now that the use has changed to a principal building used as a dwelling unit. The applicant had an approach constructed on the front of the subject property at a considerable cost due to the utilities that had to be relocated and the slope of the terrain. It should be noted that both variances would be applied to boundaries along public service lands and not privately owned land. The side yard shares a boundary with a walkway, and the rear yard is adjacent to a public park. That concludes me.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Fitzgerald. Okay, so this is an interesting one because this is something that we've had to deal with in the past multiple times. Ms. Wooden, if you can hear me, we really do feel for you. This is one of those ones where, by no fault of your own, you're kind of put in a very precarious position for sure. Now, Rich and I had spoke about this earlier. Rich, you talked about maybe having a possibility of issuing a non-compliant report, which would end up being, they would be able to be compliant, but if the house burnt down or if something.
So what a non-conforming structure status means is we are not going to seek enforcement on it. The building is okay to be where it is, but they're not allowed to do any renovations to the outside of it. They can't build a deck, they can't expand on it. And if it ever is destroyed by more than, I think, 75%, it can't be rebuilt on the same location. It has to be built to meet the required setbacks.
So that is a compromise here. Unfortunately, this is a real real stickler. So when it was originally permitted, did it have services to the property, to the subject property?
I believe it, yes, it would have back,
And service to that particular building?
yes.
Okay. Questions, concerns, thoughts out there from anybody? Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
From a safety codes compliance, is this building all complying?
The applicant did supply a home inspection report, and reading through the report, it did meet all of the inspections that they did at that time, which isn't the same as is providing the safety codes inspections, where generally during construction, you apply for the permit. Once you've completed the work, they come in and inspect it and they sign off on it. Unfortunately, she didn't have those, but the home inspection report didn't identify any infractions as far as safety codes.
It also didn't identify it as a garage, so I'm a little, Mr. Stover.
Yeah, I'm quite willing to work with a compromise on this one, especially when the new homeowner had no part of the non-compliance, and therefore probably shouldn't face the penalty for what someone else has done. So I think that's a good balance.
Mr. Clark.
Yeah, I feel for these people, but after buying it, but if this was built as a garage, would our standards be the same for a garage as a resident? We look at a lot of the properties that may have sold up there that were actually permitting times could be questionable, but I mean, go for it. This is only 8 years ago. So I don't know if just that homeowner's report is actually the proper thing, or if it's more like what we did on some other residences that they had to bring a safety codes officer in and look at wiring, look at everything to make sure it was built to spec. Because I don't know from a liability issue where we stand on that too. It's one thing to say they can't build in the same spot, but what happens if it was burnt down due to something to do with wiring or running the gas? I see the one gas line runs right along the side of the building, so which I know you can do that. I just don't know if the hanger's in the right spot or how it was actually ran.
So typically we don't do safety codes, but I hear what you're saying. I think we have done that in the past. We did that. We asked that.
The trailer last year.
Yeah, I think we asked that they did a safety inspection. Mr. Fitzgerald, you're shaking your head and agree. Okay, so normally we don't ask the applicant, but Ms. Wooden, if you could comment on it. There's two options for us here. Or three, I guess. We could deny it and you would have to move your house. 3 or 2, we could allow you the variances to the side and back setbacks, or we could issue a certificate of, what did you call it, Rich?
Non-compliance.
A certificate of non-compliance. Out of the 3, I'm pretty sure you're not going to choose the first one, but 1 or 2 or 3, which would you prefer? If you could unmute her and just, are you
So
there?
just to be clear that I understand, the second one is just that it's a variance, so we know that it's not compliant, and not that I'm planning to sell, but if I ever was to sell, what does that mean? Does that mean that non-compliance for the people that would buy it from me would be okay as well? Or that's what that means?
Thank you, Mr.
And then the third one is to get a safety inspector in, did I understand correctly?
No, so the 2 options would be, one, that we put a motion forward and it may be denied, that we allow you the variances to the side and back setbacks, or number 3, which would be that we issue a certificate of non-compliance. The safety code inspection may be added as a condition to either one of those 2. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay. If it's not clear, let me know, because I get it, so.
So Rich, I see your hand up there. Do you want to reiterate?
Thank you. Through the chair. So to explain better that non-compliance structure status, it really wouldn't affect the value of your property, and it does go with the property, not the owner. So if you were ever to put it up for sale, the next owner, that status stays with the structure. And basically all it means is they can't build onto it. They can't add a deck or do anything, modify the outside of the building. And if it ever was destroyed, then it would have to be rebuilt to meet the requirements at that time. And it basically guarantees the owner that the county is not going to seek enforcement down the road, kind of thing.
Right, and I'm totally fine with that. If something ever happened for a fire, I know I can't rebuild in the same spot. It would have to be moved, and I can't build onto it, which I would be totally fine with that as well.
So
It is what it is, and I don't expect to build on. And if I did, then I would have to, well, I'm not expecting to. So that's just the end of that. But I'm totally fine with this compromise.
So, Ms. Wooden, the only one cautionary tale, so I have personally owned a house that was non-compliant in another jurisdiction. You do have to be cautious that some financial institutions may not lend against it. Not your issue, but if you were to sell and it came up non-compliant, they may not be able to get financing. Not a big issue. In my case, it was, the deck was 6 inches too tall. I was a little upset about it, but it was, I thought, a patio, but we had a discrepancy. It became a non-compliant. It never made a difference to financing, but it could possibly. I just caution you that we don't lead you down the wrong path like some other professionals have done in the past. Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
On the topic of sales, I think it needs to be said, I sympathize for the situation you're in, because you seem to have done a fair bit of the due diligence that I would expect from someone making a purchase. You got a home inspection. You went through a professional real estate agent. And I guess my question is there an ethical boundary where they need to be doing some of the due diligence on this? Or is it?
So, Mr. Stevens, if I could, we'll have a little bit of discussion after we deal with this situation, and I think it's very much warranted that we have a little bit of discussion. But right now, let's deal with the issue that at hand right now. So the three options, of course, that we have here is deny this. The second is allow the setbacks, and the third being the certificate of non-compliant. The applicant has said that that would be the preferred way. What is the way that the board would like to see it go? Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I'll make a motion. Ms. Wooden or Mrs. Wooden seemed to be fine with the non-conformance. I think that matches what we have, so I'll make that my motion, that we allow this issue a non-conformance so that it can potentially be corrected in the future. And I would like to see safety codes inspection as well.
So we will, the motion going forward is that we allow the certificate of non-compliance or letter of non-compliance, however we write it, with one added condition that it have a safety code certificate supplied to us going forward. Does that sound what you're trying to do?
Yes.
Marlene, does that capture what we're doing? Okay. Any other questions, concerns? Mr. Gender.
I guess the part that really bothers me on this one here is, see, like in the past, we've had some real estate agents come into us, and their point being.
Can I, Mr. Gender, I think what I will do, we're going to have a discussion right after this, and hold that thought, and I will give you first billing at the next discussion, okay? Any other concerns or questions? Okay, we have a motion on the floor to issue a letter of non-compliance with one added condition of safety code. All those in favor? And opposed? Mr. Grover is opposed. Everybody else is in favor, so that's carried. Okay. And Rich, you'll be in touch with Ms. Wooden to get those. Okay. Let's have that conversation right now. Okay, Mr. Gender, go ahead.
I guess back a few years ago when we had, it was about the ER, MR up at the lake. It was one that, there was a lot that was being sold up there. And there's a real estate agent, a local one, that just kind of told these people that you own it right from up here all the way down to the water's edge. So this person was very misleading and part like that. So I'm not really sure who's to really blame on this one here. Means that the people that had it, they went and built without getting permits and all this other stuff, or whether it's a real estate agent not really through. So I could just find that there's a lot of faults in here. But when it's built. Now we've got to deal with it. So it's unfortunate that something like this happens and someone is blindsided.
Absolutely, I agree. Mr. Stevens, you had some more comments on that?
Well, I guess I'm curious what real estate agents, they belong to a professional association. I'm curious what their stance is on this, from their professional association. Where does that line end where they can advertise without verifying, we'll say? Where is that line? I'm really curious because this has come up before and not just on one particular item. At what point do you have to verify that you're advertising correctly?
So what I'm hearing from both of you is that there may need to be an education portion of this. So maybe in the county connections, if we wrote a little blurb about what's been happening to us as the county, what we're dealing with on a regular basis, and then maybe a letter to our local realtors and inviting them if they would like to come and explain to something. I don't know, just a spitballing there. Mr. Clark.
I guess maybe something that needs to be included in that too is to other people that are developing properties to realize that the first option could have been that we voted it down completely, and this alternative, somebody would have been buying a place that they couldn't occupy. So, like I said, years ago, we grandfathered things in, but 2014 is not a grandfather. 2014, somebody doing something that they shouldn't. Mm-hmm. You see a lot of properties advertised with garden sheds that have cooking facilities or bathroom facilities in them. And that in itself says to me that the realtors, I think we maybe have to even go a step further and call our local realtors in and just have a conversation with them. We wouldn't cover everybody, but we would certainly have a conversation on what they're presenting.
So do you want to do that at an MPC or a council situation?
It could be either, but I guess maybe it should be in a council situation.
Okay.
Yeah.
So would you make the motion that we instruct administration to have something brought back to council for an education, a letter writing, and then maybe an invitation to our realtors to come in and have a discussion about that? Would that be?
I would make that motion because this could really create an issue for future buyers down the road.
Okay, Mr. Gender?
We've had several in the past that have come over, like they want they want to have a loft up in it. After seeing this on here, I would damn near deny anything other than say like just being a garage from now on.
As long as you don't make your predetermination before your vote, you're probably good. Mr. McKay?
To go along with Councilor Gender's opinion on that, if they wanted to put a loft in it, then it's got to be a dwelling, alongside the garage, so they got to have the setbacks correctly. And this was a garage originally, which fell under all the guidelines that it needed to, but they've changed it over, updated it to a dwelling, so this is why it fell out of that. But if they're going to do that with a loft, I think they have to follow a dwelling standard then.
Fair point. Okay, so we have a motion on the table right now to send a letter, ask for invitation, and have council do some sort of education going forward and bring that back to council. Everybody's clear? All those in favor? And that's carried unanimous. Mr. Green? Go ahead, who's Jacinta or?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So the applicant is proposing to construct an 880 square feet, and the size has changed since the original application. Ancillary building on a 0.47 acre parcel at 35 McDonald Drive in Scenic Sands. The applicant is requesting a 65% variance to the minimum front yard setback from 25 feet to 10 feet. The proposed location of the ancillary building is at at the toe of a slope with a grade which appears to exceed 15%. When we did the reading earlier this week, it was 17.5% at the toe of the slope. Section 4312 of the county's land use bylaw stipulates on a lot in a multi-lot subdivision, a detached ancillary building or any portion thereof shall not be placed within the front yard of a parcel. The applicant is requesting a variance to provide for the placement of the garage in the front yard of lot 26, block 1, plan 8222364. Section 23.5 of the land use bylaw provides the municipal planning commission with the discretion to allow a variance to locate an ancillary building in the front yard of a parcel. Sections 23.3 and 23.4 of the land use bylaw states the municipal planning commission may allow a variance of any other minimum or maximum development standard in this bylaw. Section 23.1 of the bylaw stipulates a development authority may decide on a development permit application that does not comply with the bylaw if, in the opinion of the municipal planning commission, the proposed development would not unduly interfere with the amenities of the neighborhood or materially interfere with or affect the use, enjoyment, or value of neighboring parcels of land, and the proposed development conforms to the use prescribed in the bylaw. Section 5817 of the bylaw stipulates a building with a floor area exceeding 334 square feet shall not be permitted within 100 feet of the toe of any slope that exceeds 15% and has a height higher than 9.8 feet. Section 5817B of the bylaw states the 100-foot setback for development at the toe of the slope exceeding 15% and higher than 9.5 may be decreased by the development authority provided a slope stability assessment has been prepared by a geotechnical engineer indicating that a sufficient factor of safety is present or can be achieved with suitable site and foundation design and construction. Mr. Green, Mr. President, as you know, do you have any questions on the proposal?
So I just have one question right out of it. What's the little building to, when I'm looking at the drawn map, the 5.84 meters, what is that little building?
It's a little ancillary building that was approved by MPC earlier this fall.
Is it a permanent location? Permanent building, not a skid?
Yes.
And do we have any rules that state that you can have as many ancillary buildings as you like, or is there rules stating that we only can have a set number?
There is a limit, but it doesn't exceed the limit with the two buildings. We would still be within.
Go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I have a question about the setback along the east edge. It's labeled as 1.52 meters. That's to the foundation with a 2-foot overhang. So it's actually at the closest point of the building, 3 feet. But I also see that there's an overhead power line along that boundary, and it looks like it's on your property. So was there any concerns from the utility on how close this building's going to be to that power line?
And Mr. Green, normally we don't talk, we let you talk, but of course, we'll allow today. Oh, we'll just have a mic if we could.
That I didn't check into. It's right on the property line, maybe just a bit onto
So I think if I'm correct, one of our conditions that was standard was that utility corridors had to be adhered to with a maximum setback of utility corridors, right? So we could make that a condition that you double check with the utilities to make sure that they have no objection to this being put where it is.
Can I just say that if I build this garage, I would go, the overhead power line would go to the garage and then underground up to the house.
So this is a private power line, not a utilities power line?
From the pole to the house, basically. There's a pole up by the house and then it's underground to the house from there.
Okay, so you're changing it.
I would change it so it's overhead to the garage and then underground up to the house.
So this is, by the sounds of it, it's a private power line, so it's, yeah. Okay, that makes it different. We were just worried that it was a public utility. All right, go ahead, Jacinta.
I was just going to confirm that I did check the land titles to see if there was any easements for the power, and there wasn't any.
Fair enough. So, I mean, when you do on your property, you can do. Any other questions or concerns that are out there? The overhang works for you? Go ahead.
As long as I'm positive that the overhang is entirely on your property, I'm not a fan of, it extending into your neighbors. That's my primary concern if the, power line's not an issue. I do have a clarification that I'd like to get about slope stability.
Just if I could. So Mr. Green, to speak to that a little bit, we've had incidences where somebody has built a property and then put it a little too close to the neighbors. The neighbor complained, and then we actually made them tear down that overhang. It cost them substantial amount of money. So if you are doing this, make sure that you are 100% sure that you know where your cement is and where your overhang is, because the amount of money that individual had to spend to fix somebody's measuring area or error was very substantial, and there's really nothing we could have done about it. Okay, just so that's a caution. Okay, now go ahead, Mr. Stevens.
I'm just looking at the picture, and there was a condition in here about slope stability. Where is this slope an issue? Is it on the lake side of the residence? Because this picture doesn't look like slopes a substantial issue where this building's going. So I'd just like to get clarification on that.
So we measured the slope when we were on the site earlier this week, and it was 17.5% just at the toe of the slope where the grass would be built. And our land use bylaw does state that for any development within 100 feet of the toe of the slope of greater than 15%, then slope stability report is required.
Did you have that done, a slope stability report?
I haven't yet. This is we have an offer on this place. We don't own the place, and that's one of the conditions of the sale. I wanted to see what you guys said about the slope stability before I went ahead, because it's $2,500. So.
Okay. No, fair enough. That's what I was asking, because I know it is fairly pricey. So I think Mr. Stevens' question was, is that on the lakeside or not on the lakeside?
No, it's not on the lakeside.
So you have a map, like the picture I'm looking at, are we looking at it from the lake?
No, that is from McDonald Drive. We actually had taken more pictures on the.
Where is the lake on the picture we're looking at there now? Where is the lake?
North. It'd be
On the other side of the house.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So
On the other side of McDonald Drive. So if you're looking at McDonald Drive, the lake would be.
it is north. It is north actually. Yeah, but the way that map's set, it's not set by standard maps. Go ahead, Mr. Gender. Go ahead.
On page 61, like for your elevation grades, are those in feet? Like where it shows each line coming across?
Which page again, Mr.
Page 61.
61.
Where it shows the elevation.
Package?
Where it shows the, yes, where it shows the elevation grades.
Oh, you've got really good eyes, because I can't read that and I got my glasses.
And so I'm just kind of wondering like what the.
Looks to me that it would be in meters, would it not? That's hard to tell. No, it looks like feet. Because it's on the very top of that page, it's 30 and then 0.0, and it's a 12.0 and 10.0. So I would guess that it would be feet.
I guess like I'm just looking at the picture that's about it's the flattest part of the property. One elevation grade in there, then it gradually steps up from there. Like personally, like I would have no problems at all sticking it in there. Whether they went to build up the downward portion of it to build it up so that you're not digging into it, but that's gonna be your call as a builder or whoever you're gonna be doing it for.
So unfortunately, it is an expense that has to be done in that case. This is me speaking as a board member now. It's an expense that has to be done with the geotechnical. And unfortunately, I try to treat everybody the same in what my thought pattern is. We put this rule in for a reason because we've had a number of places that even with the best of intentions have decided to move and sway and do things that we don't want it to do. After the fact, we find out that people have put fill in that hasn't been properly compacted. We've had people that have done dig outs where we haven't seen what was put back in. So that's my opinion on that one, but this is a board decision, Mr.
There's no other questions. I'll make a motion. On the Geo Studies, we do have the rule in place. Now, unfortunately, we don't have these rules for the responsible developers. We have them for the slim minority that would be trying to push the limits or break the rules. So I will make the motion that we approve it
Setbacks? As a,
with the variance.
variance setbacks.
But we include the geotechnical as our bylaw states.
Everybody's clear on that? So we allow the variances of this setbacks, and do we call this side and backyard, or I'm not sure which one it would be.
Well, I think we have to give two variances.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying.
One to put it in the front yard that isn't allowed, and then the other, the setbacks to the property line.
Yeah, so it's the side and back lot, I think, or front lot, I guess it's a front lot, back, it's variance and a side. Depending, I guess, on how you look at the property, the setbacks from the property line.
It's the front yard, because the 10 feet would be from McDonald Drive,
Okay,
and then the placement is the section 23.5.
It's just,
Jim
when
just
you
has-
look at the overhead, like not of the diagram, but of the actual where the tree land and everything is. He's really pushing I guess that would be the west boundary. There's one that's got the house, and what page is it?
61.
Page 62.
Oh, I see, yeah.
Is that 62?
That's the actual photograph.
I had the photo of the above photo.
That's 62 in my package as well.
Yeah, that one there, yeah. Like, it really does push that property line where it could almost, like, do we have to go with that high of a variance? It's all treed right now.
Move it into the property.
Yeah, to prevent us from having issues with the other landowner down the road if he decides to develop his front property. Because it is,
Amendment you'd like to see, or what is your?
1 to 2 feet with that overhang, I'd like to see it push back a little bit more into the property.
I understand your concern, and I would accept that as a friendly amendment if that's what you're looking for.
What's acceptable?
And I'd be comfortable with doubling.
Yeah, no, and that's, I would be too. Then we're sure we're not gonna be in an infringement issue with.
And I think based on the map here, going with a 10-foot setback, which would be 8 feet from the property line at the roof closest point, I don't think that would be encroaching on your driveway. So I think that would still give you some options there.
Mr. Green, do you think that's workable?
Yes, I could probably work with that. I'd like to see it more at 8 feet, but 2 feet isn't a big deal.
I'm in favor of
Okay,
that.
so we have an amendment on that. Are you speaking to the amendment, Mr. Gender?
I'm asking more on
Clarification.
Yes.
With clarification.
Are you going to be the contractor?
For everything but the site preparation and the foundation.
The problem I seen with this one here, if you have to build it up, and then you're gonna create more of a steeper slope, say like to each side and front of the lot. So like, if you do that, you would require more setback because of the slope that's going to be taken into it.
Good point. Very good point.
So I would say yes, like I would just soon say like going the further distance to allow for that. Because I see them being able to, if they can build up the elevation of it, that I don't believe that you're gonna have much of a problem on building it there for the slopes that are going to be coming into.
Okay.
Or from towards the house side.
So we have, you're accepting it as a friendly amendment, so we're gonna take that as it is. Marlene, you've got that we're setting the setback to 10 feet over 5 feet. Now I'm gonna go to administration. Does how much of a variance are we allowing on that?
You're increasing, so you're referring to the side yard, not the front yard.
Yeah, this is what I'm thinking the side yard is. Yes, the side yard.
So for an ancillary building, it's 3 feet, so, but we're increasing it to 10 feet, right? Is that my understanding?
Okay, so he's actually in compliance on that already?
Yes, the variance would be for the front yard, which is 25 feet.
Okay.
And he's proposing a 10-foot setback from the front boundary.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to double check. So where we're at on this, gentleman, is we were imposing on them a higher condition than we would anybody else. We really cannot do that, so.
Just depending on the issues, if they can guarantee that Phil will not interfere with the other.
Well, I think my motion still had the geotechnical study, so I think that would be captured in there.
Yeah.
But I understand where you're going, and I don't think that we can be more stringent than our policies.
No, that's true. I was,
Without giving them a reason why we wouldn't do it. So, Mr. Green, you can keep it at 5, but it's strongly suggested that you be cautious, whoever does your dirt work. Because if you spill into your neighbor's yard, you'll be back here and we'll be very, very, it'd be very tough for us to side with you in that case, right? So what Mr. Gender was saying, that if you pack that in and you fill the slope, then causes grief for your neighbor, your neighbor won't be happy and neither will we, so.
So I could move it in farther from the property line. Do I have to get another approval?
Nothing has to change there.
Um,
If you move it outside of our kind of area that we don't look at, you can do that. Only you have to come if you were to ask for forgiveness. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. To be clear now, we have the variance. Okay. Okay, so we have the variance on the front setback, the front building being put in place, and the geotechnical are all in place. Any other conditions that are in place would be the ones that would be already on the list that are typical to what we normally do. Is that clear for you, Marlene?
Yeah, the doubling of the 10 feet, taking that off.
Yeah, that has been taken off, but we can't do that. Okay?
Do we have to leave it as 10 and 5?
The 5 is actually, he's
in compliance.
he only has to be 3, and he's going 5, so he's already past that. But we are asking him to do the geotechnical to make sure that when it gets there, that slopes meet what needed to do.
And use due diligence in case it spills off on your neighbor.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. Any other questions or concerns? Seeing none, all those in favor? That's carried. There you go. Do you have any questions?
So is this, does this have to go before the board again next month? So that's done as long
You
as,
just have those conditions that you have to fill, and once you fill those conditions, this lovely lady will give you a permit.
perfect.
And there is 21 day, the 21 day,
It's a condition.
yeah.
Great, thanks.
Thank you. All right, let's finish off with the 6.3. Might as well stay where we're at with development permits, having so much fun. Who's taking this one? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to develop an ancillary.
Sorry about that. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The applicant is proposing to develop an ancillary building oversized, 2,590 square feet on Lot 1, Block 1, Plan 08407757 on the northeast of 23, 3819 Weston 4th. within the agricultural district of the county's Statler land use bylaw. This is a discretionary use within the agricultural district. The proposed development meets all the required setback distances. The ancillary building oversize is intended as a workshop, storage, and horse stables. This structure will be placed on the same site where an ancillary building existed prior to being destroyed by fire last year. That concludes my.
How much bigger are they building?
It's going to be the same size, but the permitted use is only
1,500
square feet. So because they're going, it's the same size of the building that was there, but because it's over the 1,500 square feet, it's discretionary use.
Fair enough. Mr. Gender,
I'll make the motion like to go ahead with this, but I'm just, no, I'm not chit chat.
do you want to comment or no, yay?
But it is one, okay, so the reason this is, has to come to us, any farm building, if it was out, say 10 miles out in the country, it didn't have to be.
Well, if this would have been for an agricultural use, if this was a farm and he was just going to use this to store his machinery, he wouldn't need a permit. But when I asked what the use of the building was, the horse stables, storage, and his workshop, it's not really an agricultural use. So that's why, and because of the size of it, that's why it came for MPC.
I was just wondering whether it's within the IDP ceiling between Stettler and the county also.
No, not this
If you wouldn't have said workshop, we wouldn't have heard.
Police don't have workshops?
Only at the North Pole, you don't need a permit. Okay, any questions, concerns from Mr. Gender's motion? All those in favor? That's carried. Now, we're gonna go back up to Development Officer's Report, 5.1. Page 3, sorry.
Yeah, we do have a list of some of the meetings that we were attending this past month. And as well, you'll notice that we extended the development permit application submission to April 30th for Alberta Biofuel. And we also have some other applications that were deemed incomplete, so they'll be coming to you at a later date. Mostly just for gravel pit operations, so we're looking at those. And we met with the Buffalo Lake Community Association executives last Friday, and we're still working on some of the items were discussed at that meeting, including a letter to all the residents. I contacted Alberta Environment yesterday to see the status of our fact sheet, and it's currently being reviewed by a director. Once it's available to be released, she'll be sending it to us, and we'll be getting that out to all our big residents. And we did an inventory of all the RVs that are currently at the lake, and we're going to be checking for permits, valid permits as well. We're entering them into our database that we have for temporary RV permits. So when they're doing enforcement, they will have a map indicating where there's permits that are valid, and will be renewed. We'll have a list when they're up for renewal, so it'll be very helpful in the future to have that inventory. We did note that the two RVs that were going to be issued a stop order, or report order rather, last month at our MPC meeting. The two RVs have been removed, and that was at one Marina View Close. So
Removed by us or them?
by them.
Okay, what about the side structure?
It is still present on the property.
And when are we have a stop work order, when do we give them time to remove that or till we remove it?
We're going to have to start the stop order procedure again, because now the previous stop order was for the two recreational vehicles, not specific to the standalone structure that is still present. So we are monitoring, and if it's removed, otherwise we'll be bringing it back to you likely next week or next month rather. We can proceed now and send them just a formal letter asking that they remove it.
Did we not have a part of this discussion earlier? Was there not a stop work order in place that if there was not a recreational vehicle attached to it, it couldn't be there?
That's correct, yes.
So in this case, there will be no recreation vehicle attached to it.
No, I mean, they still have the potential to apply for a development permit for one RV.
But not that piece of,
Yeah.
that deck they have there is non-compliant,
Yeah.
period, plain and simple. I think it still falls under the original stock order.
We should be able
Then
to
we-
remove it at the same time.
We can certainly get a letter out to the landowner.
Mr.
Well, coming back full circle, I think the landowner's intent was when they removed the trailers, they were going to be listing this lot for sale, is what I heard their plan was. Well, coming back full circle to where we were a half hour ago, now this lot will be for sale. It's non-compliant. If we allow a non-compliant without taking enforcement action, now that we know about it, are we just kicking the can down the road and going to have potentially a very aggravated new owner wondering why we're not letting them keep structures on their property that are already there, that may have been advertised as compliant?
Hence the reason that we are going to have a conversation and a letter sent to the real estate agents. And unfortunately, we won't be able to deal with real estate agents outside our area, but hopefully the word will get out that if you are buying a property within the county of Stettler, no matter where you are, double check and make sure that it is what we say, or they say it is.
It's a very real risk on this property as well.
Absolutely. That's why I think it's imperative that we move forward as quickly as possible with stop work order and make that happen. Can I suggest a strongly worded letter? Go ahead, Mr. Gender.
Well, I think you summed it up there that we have to, because if they aren't there, we have to set it up now because they could sell it the next month before we get real estate agents in here.
Okay. Then, sorry, anything else on your report?
Well, we're looking at the land use bylaw and MDP amendments. We're meeting with Greg. So I don't know if there's anything that you identified that we would like to have addressed, but we'll be bringing obviously the draft back multiple times for you to review. But right now, we're just going through and kind of flagging anything that we see as being
I'll be honest, if I can make that, like, I don't know why we have a rule in there that the auxiliary building cannot be in the front yard. They always come to us. And I would dare say that 75% of the property at the lake that we approve, the auxiliary building is put with as a variance that they're allowed to put it in the front. Are we looking at that?
Yeah, I've already flagged that as being something that we want to reconsider. So
I mean, we did give it to them anyway, so why are we even have it as a rule? I mean, they come and they want to put the garage in front? Okay, put the garage in front. Go ahead, Mr. Clark.
Last year, that's why I voted against a couple of the variances, just for that fact, is every meeting, we were having another variance conversation on the same items. So in my opinion, if we're gonna agree to it all the time, it should be changed in our land use bylaw.
What else would we do here? This meeting would go so fast. It
Is truly the definition of insanity.
Absolutely, I agree. MPC is pretty insane sometimes.
And I believe that variance actually matches the intent, like that, those subdivisions are looking more and more urban. Well, when you look in an urban environment, that's just normal. You pull off the street into your driveway, into the garage, like it.
And I get it. You don't want to put your garage in the back. You want to enjoy your backyard. That's typically on the lake. Go ahead, Mr.
That's right. You can't access your garage from the lake. You can't, drive on the lake and come into the garage if it's in the supposedly backyard because everything's reversed in there. So it just makes sense.
Okay. So then we got any other ones that you guys can think of? Okay. If you do, please just send a note, let her know that that's what should be there. Anything else?
well, we have the survey results from our town and county IDP and Southeast Area Structure Plan that was available on our website on March the 8th. And so they've compiled, our Dylan group has compiled all the results. There were 56 respondents. And we haven't got the exact compiled summary of all the results, but we should have that available pretty soon. Just as soon as we have it, we'll get it out to you.
Was there anything that was glaring?
Well, we didn't get the results that I mentioned, but she just briefly, and I last month. Nothing outstanding, it's just some of the concerns that we were aware of. It's basically,
Okay.
and I can't, nothing right off the top that was very,
I know there was a quarter section to the south that the individual will talk about later. So. Okay, any other questions for Jacinta on her development officer's report? Seeing none,
I will make a motion to move the report be accepted.
all those in favor? That's carried, thank you, well done. 5.2, Mr. Stevens, what do you want to talk about? It's all about you. Oh.
I was hoping to get an update on, we met with a number of the South Shore residents or groups discussing the new docking and mooring policy. We said we'd get back to them with A, a fact sheet, and B, what our process was for these applications. And I was just hoping to get an update on that.
So if I could, the fact sheet should have 310 lands on the very top of it. That should be in huge 3-inch letters, 310 lands. But go ahead, sorry, Jacinta.
Highlighted, underlined.
well, as I mentioned, we don't have that fact sheet yet from Alberta Environment Parks, and we will be getting it out to the residents as soon as possible. We have tomorrow our committee of the whole meeting. That is on the agenda to discuss the docking and mooring policy and a form that just a general form that we would be providing to the residents when they're applying for the authorization from the county. So that's something that we will be working at getting drafted up to the date.
We should probably be giving at least the heads of our community associations an update though.
Yeah.
Because we are getting into that window where
Yeah.
after tomorrow's discussion or whenever we do it, we really should be getting it out to them and just that they know we're waiting on Alberta Environment to get this tech sheet or this sheet back to us for their awareness of what's supposed to be happening.
So we'll have more discussion tomorrow, but Yvette did say in a conversation that they have had a couple applications and the process seems like it's going to be fairly easy to work with. And so she's very hopeful that this should be the application and approval process should be fairly easy and painless. The enforcement is always going to be the tough one. Go ahead.
The applicants, what you would call facing the lake or further back from the lake?
That I don't
The one I know of is what we historically would have called waterfront.
So we'll see where we're at. I mean, and I agree with you, Mr. Clark, it has to be sooner than later because it is a first come, first served
And
basis.
it's getting into the point where people are gonna be wanting to do this.
Yeah. We've got ice fishing shacks sitting there sinking, so 'tis spring. So, okay, is that good, Mr. Stevens? You're happy with that?
Yeah, we can discuss it more. I just wanted to make sure that it was on the agenda, that we were still actively looking at this.
Absolutely.
I've sent a sample to just see if that would be something that we could work with, and so we'll present that tomorrow.
Perfect. Okay. Any other questions on that? Seeing none? Okay. 8.1, referral. Page 74 of our package.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Macomb County is reviewing their municipal development plan and land use bylaw. And there's some minor revisions that they are proposing, and they have a public hearing scheduled for Thursday, April the 14th at 9:30 a.m. Just attached to the memo is the notice that we received from Macomb.
Any questions, concerns with that you stand out? Everybody's had a chance to go over it. Can I get a receive for information then from Mr. Gender? All those in favor? That is carried. Okay, 8.2.
We have referral from the NRCB deeming the application complete for the change in livestock from a hog operation to a sheep operation, and they've deemed it complete, so now they're looking for our feedback on whether it complies with our municipal development plan and our land use bylaw and any IDP within, if it's outside of our exclusion area of any IDPs, and we do, it is outside the IDP CFO exclusion area. However, it is immediately adjacent to a quarter section that we propose to add to the exclusion area.
So, this individual owns both quarters, and we're taking one of his quarters of his farm into our new area, proposing to do it. He was just, when he saw that, he said he didn't want to lose any rights. So actuality, he made the application and they told him he could have 2,400 critters there. The woolly guys, and he was nowhere near that, but definitely wanted to protect his rights going forward. So he put this forward. If he would have went to the 2,400, it would have been a much bigger situation with water use and stuff like that. But as it was, so we're in that consultation with our Dylan Consulting. I think that one quarter could be pulled out without any effect going forward. So I don't think there's any issue with this going forward. Anybody else see anything that's of concern? Hey, don't look at me. I know it's sheep, but better than pigs.
I do have a question. How do sheep compare to pigs? Like, is it 1-to-1, or could they have had 2,400 pigs in that same person?
I don't know. Like, I know a number of the guys out east now are changing their pig barns. It's actually quite a conversion now that they're changing their pig barns to sheep barns. And I don't know, like, what would one of those barns typically hold for a pig?
There's such different sizes. 700,
12,000.
yeah, you got 1,200.
Yeah, I don't know the size. I just know there's a guy out there that has about 3 barns and he's got 8.
The one that sits beside me is 12,500 pigs.
Yeah, so. And it depends on where, like, what age group of the pigs, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. Okay.
and the sheep typically go out at some point. So, okay. Mr. Schober?
Yeah, I will move that we receive this for information.
But no objections.
Yeah, with no objections.
Okay, all those in favor? That is carried. Okay, 8.3.
This is just an update on the appeal to the Land and Property Rights Tribunal regarding data processing facility that we issued a stop order to on lot 71 TR, plan rather 71 TR lot OT. The deadline was extended to April the 11th, or April the 4th for the appellant, and April the 4th for the county to submit any submissions to the LPRT.
So they got an extension?
They requested an extension.
This is just received for information.
Mr. McKay.
I'll make that motion that we receive it for information.
Good update. All those in favor? What is going to be our response to it? Is just our stop work order?
Well, they haven't told us of the new date, so as far as, we don't really have any more submissions that we.
But what we submitted was just our stop work order.
Yeah, it was just our stop work, and now it is-
Okay, that's about good, I guess. Any old business? None. In camera, can I get someone to take us in camera? Have a short little discussion. Mr. Clark?
Take us in camera.
All those in favor? We are going into camera. Can you click the button, Mr. Okay. All in favor? Were you taking us out of camera?
Oh, well, you can have
I've seen his cane waving
it.
around.
You can have it. I was waving, I was just gonna start beating on my thing, you were just, bored of it.
I'd like to make a motion instructing administration to bring back a bylaw regarding cryptocurrency,
Amendment to the land use bylaw.
amendment to the land use bylaw regarding cryptocurrency operations.
Okay. Does that work for you, Marlene? Okay. And administration understands?
Yes.
Okay. Any questions or concerns on that? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor? Mr. Stolberg, your next meeting is when?
April 27th.
You were going for adjournment already? I'll give you the motion to adjourn.
April 27th is next meeting.